Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
All right. So the 31st MCU movie. I don't think we've talked about every single one of them, but like that was a bit daunting for me. I was like, dang, I've seen all those movies plus the TV shows. So
31st release in the theater movie film?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, I mean, there's been 4 Avengers movies. I mean, that right there is, a good chunk. And that's not even counting the pseudo-Avengers movie of Captain America Civil War.
Well, that's what's really going to start baking my noodle later on. How many times I've seen the same one repeatedly. Yeah. And I have seen quite a few of them a couple of times, including Dark World.
Really? Okay. All right. We just rewatched that like maybe a year ago or something, but yeah.
It's not as bad as everybody says it is. It's just not as bad. It's not.
Yeah. So for us, it's Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok. It's those that we keep coming back to.
Well, that's your sensibility. Both of you two. You and your wife had that kind of humor and that shtick.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we're very comfortable with those. I do like Ant-Man too, and I just we both recently. Steph and I recently rewatched Ant-Man and the Wasp, which technically this movie is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So they kept the Ant-Man and the Wasp title, but it does get a bit languishing in the title game there because it's a lot. That's a lot to say. But I did notice.
I'm sorry, I just blinked. Were you talking about the movie or the title?
The title.
Little joke. Well, these are the jokes, people. Is this working? These are the jokes, people.
I don't, it didn't bother me as much as I guess it bothers other people. And I think that I'm kind of coming to the reality that like, it's all going to be about the same. So I think that the worst thing that they could have done was to add TV shows into the MCU. Because what it's ended up doing is I enjoy the TV shows just fine, but it's ended up kind of like, it's hard to differentiate. It's hard to get your mind right to differentiate between a TV show and a movie. And I feel like it's been hard to keep that to keep that mindset. And then also they're trying to do things to save money in production, which I totally understand. And so it's like the TV shows have a pretty decent budget to them for a TV show, but the movies, the budgets are getting reduced or they're on a quicker timeline. Seems like the earlier MCU movies, there might have been like 2 in a year. Now there's at least 3 every year for the movies. Plus they're doing all of the writing and production on all of the TV shows. So just what is being asked of all the people involved in the MCU is a lot more. It's exponentially more than it was, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. So it makes me wonder if people are feeling, I don't know if they're trying to compare a movie like this to the first Ant-Man or what, but I think that since this is the beginning of phase 5, we've already kind of like seen this process play out. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 3 ending in Avengers Endgame. We've already kind of seen this process play out, and we can already, people who like me who don't know anything about the comics, we can already start making corollaries between Thanos and Kang the Conqueror, and we start being like, okay, maybe we see where this is going. So those are kind of like just initial reactions after seeing Wakanda Forever and this movie. And actually, we just rewatched Wakanda Forever, and it's pretty good. But I think I can see myself gravitating back towards that movie more than this movie potentially. But I was actually somewhat surprised with the chances that they took in this movie as far as like getting out of the real world as quickly as possible and staying in this quantum realm. So I applaud them for that. But what kind of reactions did you have other than it was a really long movie?
It didn't. The length didn't bother me. I'm in for the ride. I like the roller coaster ride. I like. There's really nothing to fault. I had a good time. I had fun. I just don't. And I agree with everything that you said. I just left it. Okay, so I said some positive. I had a really good time, and I did. And I will visit this film again. I'm sure of it. I visited Ant-Man a couple of times, and I think I've seen Ant-Man and Wasp twice. I'm not exactly sure. If you were to quiz me on it right now, I would fail the quiz unless it was multiple choice. But what I would say about this is that there's so much going on. There's so much design. There's so much production design. There's so much character design that I think it becomes white noise. And I had the weird, and this might be where I'm at in my life right now, and I'm just going to say that first, but it wasn't but a couple hours after I saw it. I was driving somewhere. Now, this happens to me sometimes, so I will give it to the fact that it might be me. But I was like, oh, I got to go see Ant-Man.
Oh, no.
Wasp. Yeah, to talk about it on the podcast. And I went, oh, wait, no, I saw it already. And I was instantaneously relieved that I had seen it, and I was preparing for the podcast, if you will, by turning on the mechanisms that we record on. Other than that, I'm here. And I thought, is that because the film didn't have a lasting effect on me, or that's where I'm at in my life? Because the other day I walked into the bathroom and I turned on the sink and brushed my teeth and I walked away. And in my mind, I turned off the sink. And I walked towards the bathroom or to the bedroom, and I was like, what's that noise? And I thought it was like some raining or something. And I was like, wait. And then I instantaneously went, oh, did I leave the sink on? And that stuff usually doesn't happen to me. Now, I mean, I'm the kind of person who can walk in a room and forget what I am in there for, and then have to walk back out, that kind of stuff. And some of my friends my age might say, oh, there it is, it's coming up on you. But I've been doing that my whole life. So anyway, I don't know if that's about the film or not. I thought it was a good, fun popcorn film. I was entertained the whole entire time. I was engaged the whole entire time. I don't like the over design of it. I have a couple of questions about why they didn't answer some simple questions, or at least put it in there for a little bit more of a hammer on the nail. Like, why are all those people there? How did they all get there? Did they all just come from like Kang did? Did they all just come like Michelle Pfeiffer did? Did they all come like Ant-Man did? How did they all get there? Or are they all produced there? Or there's no indication. There's an indication that, Kang's costume made him his world, and the ants later on, which is a little bit of a negative for me. Ant-Man, his name is Ant-Man. And it takes you an hour and a half, if not longer, to get to the ants.
Well, yeah, I noticed that. And about the time when I was like, why are there any ants in this movie other than the very beginning?
Why didn't a couple fall through with them? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't some of them branch off? And you know what I mean? Like, they fell through because of the pulling in.
Yes, the quantum little thing that his
colony,
daughter made.
Yeah. And the colony that the ants were making in the real world fell through, and then they branched off, and time and quantum physics or whatever made them industrial and blah, blah, blah. But then they could connect when it was convenient for them to connect to Michael Douglas, which, it is there. You do hear it, and it's obvious what he's hearing when you hear it. They kind of make it like this big reveal. It's not that big of a reveal. You know that that's the ants, and you know that he's communicating with the ants. I just wish that they could have blended the two, and the ants have some kind of form. The ants were having trouble connecting to their part of the quantum realm, or the ants were too busy, becoming industrial ants and becoming their own entity, that they couldn't come and help.
It's the Captain Marvel paradox, where it's like, well, if Captain Marvel's so awesome, why doesn't she just like fix everything all the time? So they try to deal with that in certain ways. It's like, if all they needed was Captain Marvel, why didn't Captain Marvel just like start from the very beginning? To try to like, because she was around in the 90s, so what the heck,
Well, they explain that a little bit.
They do. They spend time to explain that. So, but for a lot of people, it's not satisfying enough. And it's like, why even have this character if you're not going to utilize this character until the 11th hour, which is what they end up doing. I mean, we're kind of spoiling a lot of stuff, but I mean, if you've listened to us before, you've hopefully heard us talk about these other movies. And then specifically in this movie, guess what? There's ants in it. So,
I did kind of go through it.
But,
I did kind of barrel through it. But
it's okay. The problem, or the thing is, if there aren't ants in it, it shouldn't be called. I mean, it shouldn't. You're kind of missing a big element of Ant-Man, especially the last two movies.
I apologize if I just barreled through and didn't say spoilers, because now I'm thinking about everything I just said, and maybe I shouldn't have said that stuff. But okay, so spoilers from this point on. I don't mean to be facetious, but it's not necessarily that you need the ants because he's Ant-Man, because, you know, he's Captain America. He's not always in America. You know, he's fighting other places, or maybe not. I don't know. Well, yeah, he is Sokovia and different places around the world. Anyway, you know, you don't necessarily have to have the ants because the character's name is Ant-Man, but what they've done in this world is they've established that the ants are as important, if not a pinnacle part to the characters, the heroes succeeding. They would not have succeeded if it wasn't because of the ants in the last two films, per se, and they wouldn't have succeeded in this one if it wasn't for the ants. So maybe they were waiting for a build up. And they got it, but there's so much time from the time you see the ants. And digitally, the ants are cool. Yeah. They look realistic, and they're almost really frightening looking, especially with all that armor they got on.
When they have like the hairs on them,
yeah,
you can kind of see.
Yeah, it's really creepy, but it makes sense. So, yeah, there's just too much going on for me to have taken it in and. But you know what? I thought it's interesting that this is one of the first things we were talking about, because I did think to myself, what would this be like if I was 10 years old? My mind would be blown, and I would want to be an ant, and I would want to be the Wasp, and I would want to be Michelle Pfeiffer. I would want to be those characters. So that says something, because my mind kind of took me back there. But I have the biggest, sorry to interrupt you again,
No.
I have the biggest suspension of disbelief that any adult has, and yet I kept pulling myself out of the film when I was watching it. I don't know why.
For me, I went into the movie with zero expectations, and I was, like I said, surprised that they got into the quantum realm as quickly as they did, because they kind of like get away from having to deal with San Francisco or, you know, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of really all the San Francisco stuff at the very beginning is just setting up his character and setting up his daughter's character, like those two characters, because there's going to be, you know, we have to establish her as a more adult person instead of just a child. And then we have to establish him as this kind of like complacent and satisfied guy who doesn't really have any kind of an impetus to do much of anything. You know, he's kind of resting on his laurels to a certain extent. So I understand why they put that in there, but I mean, it seemed like it was 10 minutes maybe, and then they were in the quantum realm.
Yeah,
it was quick.
It was quick.
And so when they get into the quantum realm, that's when his character arc starts up. But the big and then I do like that they tease Kang at the very beginning, and we already know. I mean, if you've seen Loki, I mean, you know, at least somebody who looks like him was a bad guy, and it's not the same thing. It's not the same entity, but it's another one of those entities that I guess will translate. But anyway, so I think that the thing that I thought was really intriguing to me is the fact that they went in and generated multiple different beings within this quantum realm. It's kind of like the world is your oyster. You don't have to have all humanoid things. You know, they've got the goopy guy with the weird eyes inside that is intrigued with holes, you know, which is that's the same guy who played the kind of like Russian ex-con security guy in the last two Ant-Man's, David Dastmalchian. He also played the Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad. So he voices that character. But those types of things, and just a lot of the kind of like the practical effects on even the humanoid things, and the bartender that had all the arms and all that stuff. I mean, that gave me, you know, early Star Wars vibes, where you're just trying to like, it's like there's no rules. Like, we can just come up with anything, and we want to figure out a way to make this seem like it's a place that, you know, stranger in a strange land, and you're just jumping in. You don't know any of the rules. I do like the way they dealt with the drink this goop and you can now understand everybody. It's simple, but it totally keeps you. It kept me from tapping out and being like, it doesn't make sense. Why would everybody speak English? Doesn't make sense. And these are totally different entities. How do they all even speak with each other? Well, they deal with all that. So I liked all that. They really did kind of answer a lot of questions and not paint themselves into a corner by building out this world. But then once they get there, now we need to figure out, what pushes this forward. There's a lot that's kind of like, part and parcel, just like Star Wars and Empire. I mean, you got the Lando Calrissian type character in Bill Murray's character. I mean, it's the same character. So, it's like a buddy who was a buddy, but now isn't a buddy. And what are his motivations? He's kind of been corrupted. It's kind of like right down the line. They're kind of taking a bunch of pages from the Star Wars playbook, but I don't necessarily like fault it for that. But once we start getting into the last half of the movie, that's when I think it starts getting a bit rough. But I'm going to interrupt because I don't want to be point counterpoint, and I don't want to be con to your pro or pro to your con. But everything you say, I semi agree with, but I also I disagree with a little bit. Mm-hmm. You're right. The San Francisco stuff, 10 minutes in, but oh shoot, his name just went out of my head. Oh my gosh. I can't think of his name all of a sudden. He's in the first two movies. He's the comic relief. And Michael Pena.
I can't believe I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, he's not in it. T.I.'s not in it.
I'm so disappointed in myself because what I said was put him in every MCU.
Yeah.
I said, go ahead, put him back, re-edit everything and put him in. And there's no real reason why he couldn't have been in that room when that quantum projector was turned on. I mean, but there's a lot of characters that come from our realm to their realm, so I understand why they deleted it, but there's not even a scene, there's not even a callback, there's not even I bet you he would have been able to solve this problem. There's not him up in, I don't know if it's up and down and over wherever the earth that we live in. Within, there you go. But you can see Michael Pena drinking cappuccino on the side of the street, and I'm so glad, I don't know where he's at, but I'm so glad I'm not with him today. Something, mm-hmm. just to pay some form of homage to his character, but okay, not necessary. Now, as for the design and as for the Star Wars references, if you will, or borrowing from, I think they should have leaned into it. Should there have been characters playing saxophones and horns and stuff like that? Yes. Lean into it, because there's no way you can go to a bar in another land, another within land, another cosmic land, another quantum land world, and not think of the bar scene from Star Wars. You just cannot do it.
Should they have name checked it?
They could have done something. I mean, even if it was just a tad bit in the score or something, they should have
just like, where's Greedo? Like sort of like,
maybe not that direct, but they could have, or maybe they chose not to because everybody's going to think it anyway. Mm-hmm. And as for the design of all of the humanoid characters, yes, some of them are blobby, some of them don't have holes, and that guy's funny, and some of them had tentacles and stuff like that, but it's always humanoid-esque. It always is arms and legs, and it's always eyes, and it's always weird noses, and they call it the Star Trek nose. You have a character from another planet. You just put on a different nose or a different forehead, and he's from or she's from.
He's a Romulan.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so I don't think they went far enough, and I think they could have gone further. But at the same time, there's so much going on in the first half an hour of that film. It just all blends into one. And the kind of cannon guy for the head, I thought he was interesting. Yeah, I thought he was interesting. I thought the warrior princess, I don't know her character's name either. I thought she was interesting. I wanted to know more about her. And so I thought that something like that could have been done where there's no gas, there's no mist, there's no, like in Hellboy, the gas character that gets into the suit and he becomes humanoid-esque, but he's still a gaseous state. He's in he's a cloud of gas, and he never is anything other than that. Without that suit, he can't communicate, blah blah blah. So I think they could have leaned into something like that a little bit more. And then the design is so epic, it just starts to blend. I can't distinguish the two. And then they bring up things in the film that they never answer. Where does all of this stuff come from? And they're just like, oh, well, we'll talk about it later, or oh, it's, you know, it's unexpected, but it is what it's like down here. Don't keep your mind closed to the fact that the quantum realm has animals in it, or plants in it, or mosquitoes in it, or whatever it is.
It's the something void. They kind of like wave their hands and say like, oh, this is the, you know, past the something void. You know, it's you know, I don't know how to, instead of it being like farther away, it's like even smaller. Like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, I guess. But you know, there's a way to get somebody there, because all of the Council of Kangs, they banished this Kang the Conqueror to the quantum realm. So that's the whole, his whole.
Yeah, but how did everybody else get there?
Yeah, I've no idea.
Are they just like, we could ask the same question about us here on the Earth? You know, people have been asking it for thousands of years now, hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, in the same way that there's, you know, on your skin, there's a whole ecosystem of small bugs and things
on your
eyelashes, all of
on
that,
your pillows.
So
okay,
it's something that's not seen, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So yeah,
but and then maybe I'm wanting to be spoon-fed. I just think they should have mentioned something along the lines. That would have been a perfect way to explain it. How do all these creatures become? Well, how are all those things on your skin? You know, and something could have popped off of somebody's skin microscopically, and all of a sudden you have a callback to it later on in the film where this microscopic thing that jumped off of Cassie's skin now has a colony of whatever, and it, you know, what's the?
They're like worshiping the little mite that jumped out of her skin.
Yeah. So it's fun, and it's electric, and it's day glow to the point of desensitizing me to everything. And it reminded me of Ready Player One in places, with all of the different characters coming to fight. It looked more like a video game than a movie, which is fine. I don't have a problem with any of that. It just wasn't as satisfying as I thought it was going to be. When you see the trailer, and I know you try to stay away from things like that, but when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be a bunch of new people, a bunch of new characters, a bunch of new blobs without holes. That you know, you'll get to know different characters. It reminded me of Ragnarok. It reminded me of knowing these characters. But think about Ragnarok. You have a handful of distinct characters that are side characters that have become kind of, you know, part of the Thor
Korg
world. Yeah, right, exactly. He's one. Yeah, two characters. And so I would like to have gotten attached to the characters instead of seeing what the designer could design for all of the characters. I don't know.
Well, and so I guess another question would be, would you have been satisfied with a 6-episode miniseries on Disney Plus if this was broken up into 6 30-minute episodes, or whatever, 6 25-minute episodes? I mean, would that have hit a little bit better? Maybe,
because maybe you could take it in.
Yeah, and you could talk about it in between and kind of see, and that's where I'm getting into this. Like, what's the difference now? You know, if it's going to be the same subject matter and it's going to be the same length total, like Hawkeye could have been a movie. It was set over like 4 days, and it was a contained story. Just like a movie, just like one of these movies. I mean, Ant-Man Quantumania is a contained story, and it's set over a handful of days, maybe, or a day, I guess, or a day and a half. So, what's the difference other than you go to a theater, you sit down, and you eat popcorn while you watch it once, instead of sitting down 6 times once a week to watch a little chunk of it?
I guess that would be the difference between a one-off comic and a series where the story takes 3 months to be told.
But it's not even that. It's like the Green Mile, where they only give you 50 pages at a time, and then you get one little piece every week or every 2 weeks. I mean, it's the same story. It's just being given out to you in small pieces. I don't know.
Probably production cost.
Yeah,
Probably.
it just seems like they've muddied the waters to me. Like they
Well, also, do you want to see a She-Hulk movie without knowing the character before you know it? I mean, do you want to?
I
Do you
did with
want
Guardians of the Galaxy, and I loved it.
Right. Well, that's a team up though, so that might have been a little bit different and very distinct characters. Not that she's not.
Yeah.
She's very much a standout. But do you want a standalone movie for all these films? Now, Paul Rudd has proven to be an actor we can bank on, and also an actor we can watch for 2 hours. And then you give the plot to Michelle Pfeiffer, and you're good. And by the way, I just have to side note. How great does she look, first of all? Because when they de-age her, she looks exactly the same.
I know.
She only looks like she has darker hair. And I was like, I know they de-aged her because you can kind of tell. But really, when you see her again, you're like, if you were wearing that brown hair now, no one would know the difference. That's how great she looks. Anyway, so, yeah, I understand what you're saying, that they muddied the water. But did they? Maybe because I come from a comic book world, although I wasn't a Marvel person when I was growing up, I was a DC person. I've said that before. Maybe I'm just used to all of these branches that go into different directions. And now you got the whole DCU or DCEU, whatever they're saying now.
They're changing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just James Gunn's DC.
Yeah, but people are calling it something. Now that with the new Joker film and the new Batman film, part 2 of both of them are in production or getting ready for the Batman, and the Joker 2 is in production. Those are going to be considered Elseworld. So, I mean, maybe I'm just used to it. So, I don't know. I think if they had made a more concise, more specific film that had more at stake, even though they're setting up Kang as this big Thanos character, and there's all this talk online about how he's stronger than Thanos and this comparison and blah, 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 blah. You go down a rabbit hole on Twitter and you just can't get out of it. Sometimes I enjoy it, sometimes I don't. But the point is that I think it's the structure of the narrative of the film that is showing those cracks in the MCU. And I don't necessarily think that... So this is how I look at it. If this had been one of the first films to come out, would we have thought it was a masterpiece because we had not been exposed to the world as much as we've been exposed to the world? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think you start with something like Iron Man, and it's so grounded, and it doesn't ask as much of the audience as a movie like this does.
Yeah, but if you were to start off with Ant-Man as the first film, and this be the third film, like Ragnarok is the third film.
Second film.
Ragnarok.
Oh no, it is the third film. I forget the Dark World.
Why do people?
There's like a car and it's upside down.
A lot of things happening in the Dark World that's worth
it's
watching.
The Aether and the Dark Elf.
I'm just gonna stare at you until you stop, because I liked him. I like his braid in his hair. You know, he gets a lot of slack for that braid in that hair. But anyway,
at least he doesn't have the bleach blonde eyebrows or whatever that he had in the first one. Those are weird.
All white contacts or something like that. But so if Ant-Man had been one of the first, which it was sort of, not really.
No,
but,
I mean, it was in like phase 2, I think. Phase 2, yeah.
Right, but if it had been in phase 1 and right out the, introducing the world by introducing you to Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, and by the time we've got to Avenger Endgame, we would have had Quantumania. Would this film was this film as satisfying narratively? And I just think the answer is no. Yeah. I think it's has so much going on, but there's not enough going on, if that makes any sense. The narrative is just straightforward rescue film. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you're right that it's weird how things happen very quickly in this film, but then take a very long time to play out afterwards. They have to meet up with each other because she has to tell them that Kang exists, even though she refused to tell them. Why would she not tell anybody about that? First of all, the Michelle Pfeiffer character, because isn't that kind of important? Does she just assume he would never get out? But she did meet him, and she did see all that stuff by touching his little spaceship, and maintain. So why didn't she tell Michael Douglas? Why didn't she tell, and then
she was ashamed.
Yeah, but okay. But you're talking about a cosmic threat, a universal, uh, all-encompassing threat to everything in our existence, not just our existence, but the universe, the whole everything, even the multiverse. He's he's called the Conqueror. So it would have been okay for me if Michael Douglas had been like, hey, you know what? She did mention this to me, not mention it. She told me about it, and we've been working on something to maintain the quantum realm contained. That's why it was so. But then they allow Michael Douglas and Cassie to work on that thing together, and that just voids it.
Because Cassie's smart, obviously, because she's dealing with all this stuff. But then it's like she's getting help from Michael Douglas, and
which I understand why they did that, because that's supposed to be a parallel to what happened with Scott in the first film. He gets all of the help from Michael Douglas and so forth and so on. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that they did in this film that I enjoyed the ride, but the ride's bumpy for me.
Yeah. I have Cocaine Bear written down here. And I guess like I'm trying to, it seems like that movie that is just coming out like right now, I guess. It seems like that movie was made and it knew what it was. Like it knows that it's like a kind of a crappy movie, like a B movie, and they're trying to live up that kind of reputation, and they're like, we know it's dumb, we know it looks bad, we know all of that, so like let's all laugh together. Like I feel like this Ant-Man movie is not that. I feel like this Ant-Man movie is trying to be sincere, and it's trying to be serious, and it's trying to set up all of these things. So I'm just trying to figure out like what's worse. Is it a movie that, takes a big swing and doesn't connect, or is it a movie that purposefully strikes out looking, essentially doesn't even try? Where is, I have not seen Cocaine Bear, but I'm getting a strong vibe from that movie that is, we're just gonna put something up that people will talk about for a weekend and then like move on. And maybe that was the norm in movies a long time ago when they didn't spend $250 million on every movie. But I don't know. It just seems, I'm just trying to figure out like whether the MCU's jumped the shark or not. And I want to watch these things. But it seems like it's getting a lot more convenient to watch them at home 30 minutes at a time every week versus having to try to put this movie up against other movies in the MCU that it seems like there was, I don't want to say more care, because I know everybody that worked on this was, maybe it has to do with the deadlines and stuff that they're under. I don't know, but it just seems like they spent more time crafting the older MCU movies compared to this movie. I don't know. That's the feeling I'm getting.
Well, you take out the factor that there are TV shows that you can watch that are muddying the waters, and let's say you could only go to the theater to see Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantumania. Would it be a satisfying experience? On some level, yeah, sure. Some level, it was, it's a popcorn movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. But inside some of the popcorn movies that we've talked about, and in particular, Avatar, The Way of the Water, it's still has its complexities to it. It still has its narrative of what it needs to tell in the story. The storytelling is still very well done, in my opinion. Now, people might argue that, people might disagree with that, people might say that he's just reiterating the stuff that he's done, but what is brand new? Because Quantumania, if you look at it the right way, it really is just Ant-Man retold, because then she gets big and she talks about limes, and then he's like, yeah, right, you have a costume, how'd you get the costume, which is like him stealing the costume in the beginning of the first movie. So this is how this kind of stuff works, but they found a way in Ragnarok to make that work, but then they kind of blew it out of the water with Love and Thunder, where sometimes I think that, and we've talked about this, they should hire a person to tell people, no, don't do that. No, that's not a good idea. No, no, no. Just because you can, you shouldn't. Or you should or shouldn't. Like somebody should have talked to uh, people, whoever it may be, on Love and Thunder and said, really? You want to make him Thunder and her Love? That's where this is going? This is how this is ending. Are you sure that's what you want to do? And if you do, then you need to back it up all the way through. And they try in that film. They really do try with the Natalie Portman subplot and her sickness and all that other stuff. They do try. They try hard. It's a fail. It's a swing and a miss. And I think you're right. Is it just they've lost their way, or it's a swing and a miss with Quantumania? I think it's a swing and a miss. I think it's a really great up at bat, and they just cannot connect with the ball. They just cannot. And it probably has a lot to do with a lot of things, because you're right. You do need to own the fact that a lot of people worked really hard on this film, and you can tell there's some blood in the water here. There's not just tinsel. You can tell that they're trying, but, and then it could be one of those things where, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, I'll put it on and I'll just ride the wave and laugh and have a good time and not worry about what it's supposed to teach me as a moral of the story or any of that stuff that I think adds to a film like this, or adds to comic books, or adds to Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings. There's a moral to the story. And even though it's a fantasy film or a comic book movie, that's why the discussion with Martin Scorsese is an interesting discussion, because I would never say a bad word about that man to save my life. But I think it's an unfair statement that he made, that that's not real cinema. Real cinema to me is telling a story that has some kind of meaning behind it. And you learn something about yourself. You learn something about the characters. And through learning about the characters, you can relate to being a human being and realize that this human condition is connective, not disconnective. Does this film do that? Maybe not.
I mean,
maybe it needs some more heart and soul.
I mean, really, yeah, my version of cinema, the definition of cinema would be like something that evokes emotion by use of visuals and sound. I mean, like together.
That's the widest definition, and I love that.
Yeah.
Because how can you not say The Life of Pi?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
And it's a great story too. But visually, it's stunning.
Yeah, or something like The Fountain, or I mean, yeah,
that's some challenging stuff there.
Yeah, but it does evoke emotion. But then, at the same time, Any Given Sunday can evoke emotion.
Absolutely.
So, but those are kind of, you look at those two movies and it's like, well, what do those things have in common? Well, they're evoking emotion. So, Cocaine Bear may evoke revulsion. I don't know.
What's with you and Cocaine Bear? I think you just want to say Cocaine Bear.
I'm just using Cocaine Bear as a kind of a whipping boy.
I feel you. Yeah,
but
I feel you.
But still, I'm trying to let me bring it back to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, in that I really don't think that the people involved in this movie were discounting of the story or discounting of the characters. It's just, there's a lot going on, and it's probably a lot harder to make the 31st MCU movie be as engaging as the third one or the fifth one or the seventh one, because we as audience goers, it's kind of old hat for us at this point.
Let me end by asking you a question. Jonathan Majors is a talent, and he's infinitely watchable, and he's great as Kang, and I want to see what's going on. So let me end by asking you a question. Was there two end credits, the one end credit with the multiple Kangs and then another one? Because I missed the last one. Okay, yeah, I didn't see the last one.
Yeah, the last one sets up season 2 of Loki. It's Owen
Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson. Why does that sound weird? Owen Wilson. Okay.
Because you have Cocaine Bear.
Because I've got Cocaine Bear on the brain.
Stop saying it.
Owen Wilson and Loki. Tom Hiddleston are watching. It's in turn of the century somewhere, England or something, and they're watching this like magician, and the magician turns out to be another Kang, which is, he has a mustache, and I guess that there was it's related to an established Kang version in the comic books. So yeah, it's Jonathan Majors as Kang. And I can't remember what it's called, but that's like Victor Timely or something is the name. So that's it. That's it. And they're like, hey, I didn't know, I didn't think this was a big deal, but yeah, I don't know. That they're just setting up Loki season 2.
Well, I think that the first end credit's interesting because Jonathan Major gets to really show off his talent. And he strangely sounds like he's part of the Us cast with that choking throat thing that he's doing,
Yeah.
which for some reason, thought they were playing on that at first, but maybe not. But what did the Kang that got exiled to the quantum realm do to be exiled? Like, that's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
That sparks some interest. The other stuff is a little hokey cheesy, where it's like, okay, Kang and a bunch of different things, and then of course a humanoid with a strange face and strange forehead, blue Kang, bluer Kang than the other Kangs. But so that was interesting to me. I'm curious to know why the exile became an exile. So hopefully, I think he's epic enough to pull it off, to be the Thanos of the Phase 5 or wherever we're at. But ultimately, they need to connect it stronger. They need to pull the narrative together in order to become as epic as Endgame, if that's where they're heading with this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why they would head that direction, but obviously that's where they're going, and this is for our lifetime that MCU Marvel Studios will be around. So good. You listen, if you have time to see Quantumania and you like popcorn and you like soda and you like to sit there and just lose yourself in 2 hours and 15 minutes of a movie, this is the movie for you. Is it some deep, thought-provoked thriller adventure film? No, it's not. But overall, it's entertaining, and I think that is valuable regardless.
Yeah, and you're right, and I think that it'll be fun to revisit it and see what it's like with some distance. Because like I said, just rewatching Wakanda Forever recently, I had a little bit more distance and I enjoyed it even more. So
good.
Yeah, no, it was good. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.